Today we're going to talk about the tomato versus the carrot. What is better on keto? The reason I created this video is to show you a couple things about the total carb, the net carb, the fiber, and the sugar, okay? So if we're talking about vegetables, there are certain vegetables that are a little bit higher in sugar, less fiber than other vegetables. Like for example, celery, for example, has a lot of fiber, very low sugar, not a heck of a lot of carbohydrate. So you really have to kind of think with it when you're doing keto, because we want low carb as much as possible, low sugar, of course. But check this out. We're allowed some carbohydrate, between 20 and 50 grams, okay? I'm going to recommend counting the net carb, not the total carb. Why? Because the net carb is basically the total carb minus the fiber. And fiber does not have any influence over insulin. It will not affect your insulin levels, so we don't have to include that in this formula. So let's start with the tomato. If we compare that to a carrot, it's 11 grams of carbs, okay? The goal of keto is to keep your carbs low. But so far, we're within the range. Then if we get the fiber, it's 1.5. Carrot has 3 grams of fiber, so obviously the carrot has more fiber. The more fiber, the less the insulin response, because it buffers the carbohydrate. So if we take the net carb, with the tomato, we're only dealing with 3.3 grams. It's pretty low, right? Now with a carrot, we're dealing with 8 grams, more than double. So obviously, right off the bat, tomato is better than carrot on keto. But let's look at the sugars. 3 grams of sugar, 5 grams of sugar over here. So obviously the tomato wins, but if you compare these two, we're still well within our limit right here. So if you're doing keto, I would not necessarily try to restrict this, either one of these, unless you have a very slow metabolism and it's not working and you want to find an area that you need to bring your carbs even lower. Now, I want to show you one more thing. I want to show you the potato. The potato is also a vegetable, but it's also a starch. So we start out 1 potato. This is basically 1 cup, right? And this is 1 cup of potato, 37 grams of carbs. And that's almost 4 times a cup of carrots. So it's quite a bit of carb. Now, as far as fiber, it's 4.7 grams. Not that much, all right? With a net carb of 32.3 grams. If we compare that to a tomato, it's 10 times more than a tomato. And then we have the sugars, 1.7 grams. That's pretty low. That's actually less than a tomato, right? Less than a carrot. So you're like, wow, it has less sugar. It must be okay. But wait a second. We have 32.3 net carbs and 1.7 grams of sugar, but what's the difference here? It's starch, okay? Starch would be compared as your stored sugar in your body, or glycogen. Okay, that's what a starch is. Like rice is a starch. Now, if we look at a carrot, okay, we have the difference between 5 grams and 8 grams. So we're getting a very, very small amount of starch, right? Compared to this 1.7 to 32. Now look at the difference between 3 and 3.3. So we have a very, very tiny amount of starch in a tomato, a little more in a carrot, but a tremendous amount of it in a potato. This starch is a type of carbohydrate that can affect our blood sugars if we cook it, okay? If you fry it, if you bake it, because it's going to break it down, it's going to release it. If you did a raw potato, chances are it's not going to actually affect your blood sugars too much, but who is going to want to consume a raw potato? But another point I want to bring up is the way that these foods are prepared. The more you cook the tomato, the more you're going to release the starch. The more you cook the carrot, the greater the breakdown of starch, the higher the blood sugars. But this is going to be the worst right here. So you'd want to avoid potatoes in the form of the potato chip, the French fry, the baked potato, or the mashed potato, because you're going to massively spike your blood sugars with that. All right, guys, I hope this clarified a couple things. Thanks for watching. Hey, if you're liking this content, please subscribe now, and I will actually keep you updated on future videos.